We'll get started here in just a minute.
Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. How about yourself?
Wonderful. Doing well, doing well.
Good.
We'll get started here in just a minute.
Okay, I believe you.
Good to hear from you.
Uh-huh.
Judy, you're there too?
Sir?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Host,
Yes.
once we get settled in, I'll be going in and out, so I just wanted you to know if you call me and I don't answer.
Oh, you'll be leaving?
No, I'll have to go up front. They have a tour going on. They have nobody to watch the front,
I see.
so I'll be between the two places.
You'll be checking back with the students then?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Get my light to work here. Here we go. We're going to get started here in just a moment. If you didn't get to see or talk to your facilitators or me about your test grades, I have those graded. We've had, Blackboard's been down again. We've had some problems in getting all those things on Grade Center, but hopefully soon I'll have that. But you can take this grade and on that sheet that I gave you in the syllabus, just put those two together from the first and then add those together. That's your first unit grade. some of you have done some things to add, extra points to that. I had someone ask me a couple of times, recently, can I still add to that? Yes, you can, and there are other opportunities here on this campus. The gallery is still open today, and it will be until Friday. So you could go over there and take a picture of some artwork that you like and write something about it. And that can give you some points that will add into this. On Tuesday, I'm going to give you a required assignment that will add in points to your grade. So your question? Okay. You're able to get some extra points that way easily. It's something that won't be hard for you to do. So I know we're just getting started off, and it's difficult sometimes with juggling your schedule and all your classes and everything else, but you're getting used to it, and I'm helping you as much as I can. Do y'all think? I'm helping you quite a bit, I think. I don't think any of the other art appreciation instructors give you notes like this. Some post them. I have students still that say I didn't see them on Blackboard, but they're there. And I also send you an email with them. So you got some good helps to get you along. Excuse me a second. Question? Okay. I will tell you this, if you have any worries about anything or concerns or just a question about what your grade is, you've forgotten what you didn't write it down or whatever, let me know. Communication is really important. You'll hear me say that again and again, that communication is very important. But that takes communication on my part. It also takes communication on your part, listening and then responding or just hearing. Our youngest son one time did something that made a friend of his mad. It wasn't really a friend, but it was someone that he had to be in class with. And this was a guy who would get upset at the least little thing. And come on in. And so he said, you know, I'm going to take the high road. I'm just going to apologize. So he said, my mistake. And this guy was ready to fight him, and he said something bad to him. And he said, what? And he said, did you say my mama stinks? And so it's like sometimes communication is it's definitely a two-way street, right? He said, no, I did not say your mama, anything about your mom. I know your mom. Anyway, so listening is important, right? And communicating is important. So if I'm not communicating, y'all let me know. So I want to pick up where we were here earlier. Looks like I've lost my screen again. And we're talking about drawing. Now, I'm not giving you notes for a while because we're going to cover several things. We're going to cover all the two-dimensional piece, right? All the two-dimensional media, all the flat media. Drawing, painting, printmaking, photography, and then we'll throw video and film in there as well. But let's go to this, but I'll do each of those in turn. So each will have its own presentation. But make sure, see if we can get this up on screen here. That's what I wanted. Come in. Okay, so you do have this in your notes, right? That all drawings fit into one of these categories. It can be a sketch, it can be a plan, okay, or a fully developed, a finished work of art. So I'll talk about that. We looked at examples of that. We'll look at some more today. but I'm gonna show you some drawing media, and we're gonna talk about dry media and fluid media and so on. So we'll, take a minute and just look at materials. Now, I know some of you you've told me you've had art classes. Pardon me. We worked yesterday on the mosaic, putting the mosaic up. We worked about 7 hours, and whatever's in the air right now does not agree with me very, very good, no matter what allergy medicine I take. And if y'all are tired, I empathize, right? Empathize is, you can identify with that feeling. So I worked hard yesterday, and with my old muscles and everything, try to stay in shape, but I'm still very tired. I'm sore, but I'm here. I'm blessed to be here with you, and I'm glad. And we accomplished quite a bit yesterday, but if I have to stop and clear my throat, y'all bless you. Y'all, tissue up here, y'all be understanding about that. My voice is a little bit lower register today too, I think, but that's all right. I'll put on my announcer voice today. If you're just joining us, we'll be all right. So I want to show some art materials here, and we'll talk about each of these in turn. But you all are familiar, and I'm going to switch my camera here to this. I think it'll switch. Some of you have had drawing class or art class where you've done drawing. Some of you do drawing on your own. But, all right, we'll go with that. I'm ready for your close-up, Mr. DeMille. All right. You're familiar with using pencil, and a regular graphite pencil like this one you're familiar with, right? And this is just a pencil. Looks like it has some teeth marks on it. I picked this up at the house. I don't think those are my teeth marks. We can send to that forensics and see what they say. Anyway, regular graphite pencil. Now this is graphite. We call it pencil lead, right? So it's graphite. When I was, I think in the 5th grade, there was a guy that, not to be recommended, stuck one of these point up in his back pocket, and then we were playing on the playground, and somebody jumped on his back and got jabbed in the thigh with the pencil. It wasn't a bad wound, but he thought, I'm going to die of lead poisoning. Well, it's not lead, it's graphite, right? It's a greasy material, and I'll show you here in a moment. It works well, it blends well because it's a mineral. It's been refined in certain ways to make it where it works in a pencil. But honestly, I used one of these almost down to the nub yesterday, drawing some outlines for pieces of that mosaic on that mortar wall, cinder block wall. And I thought, how indispensable is a pencil? We use them all the time, right? And you couldn't live without it. And I'll talk about why that came into play in history a little bit later. And so I'm going to show some different varieties of graphite pencil, and I'll pull these out in a moment. Here's some of my little kit, and here's my other. I bring this in. It looks like I've got my crackle here. Sorry, I don't have any candy today either. I may give you some later, but anyway, different graphite pencils, and then you have different. This is which is weird. It's a 2.5. You have you have B pencils, you have HB pencils. Let me see what I've got here. I had a set and I didn't grab them. I'll show them later. But you have, this is a graphite stick, and it's worn down to the nub here. You can see, let's see if I can get my light open a little bit more. Yeah, this is a graphite stick. Now, I can take this pencil here, which is a 2.5, which is a fairly regular pencil. 2B is what they usually use. You can't even hardly see it there. But if I shade with that pencil, you can start to see a little bit maybe. My camera's doing something interesting today. But you can see that, right? A little bit. Close the iris down. There we go. You can see that. You can blend that. Now, some people take their finger and blend it. That's a no-no, right? If you're in drawing class. In fact, I always tell my students to put a cover sheet on their drawing and don't let any fingerprints get on your drawing, if you can help it, because you don't smear your drawing that way. Some of you have seen blending stumps like this. It's just tightly rolled paper. But this one, probably need to clean it, just clean it with an eraser just a little bit like this and get some of the graphite off of it and get it a clean surface. But you can blend that easier than you can with your finger. You can buy these at Hobby Lobby or Varsity or wherever. But that blends it. So that's the 2B pencil, or 2.5. But this is a graphite stick. And this graphite stick is much darker. And it's just a stick, just like what we call the pencil lead in here. It doesn't have any wood around it. It's just got varnished surface on the outside. And you can buy these in long pencils. They're getting kind of expensive. But graphite is a mineral that's mined out of the ground. It's a byproduct of the oil industry. I have some in my toolbox. You can spray it inside a sticky lock, and the graphite makes the lock work better. So it's an interesting material. It's used in types of lubricants for machine parts because it is that greasiness. And I didn't bring my whole little set of graphite pencils. I've got another one or two here. But they have different grades on them. Bless you again. And so that's graphite. But one of the earliest types of marking that they had was charcoal, and I've got a whole set of charcoal here. I don't want to. That was interesting. I had a little thing going to the cubby hole there. They've got a little wire raceway. But charcoal probably came from just burned campfires, and people realized that they could take a piece of a burned twig or a burned piece of wood and make a mark. So this is called vine charcoal. And this charcoal, you can see how much darker that mark is. And this is a lot messier than that powder. If you ever go in the art drawing room over in the Fine Arts Building, they've got a drain in the floor and it slopes toward the center. They hose it down every once in a while. If people are drawing in there and they have these big charcoal drawings, and they use sticks, you can use these big sticks like this, and then compress charcoal pieces. Here's one that's kind of worn down, but that's been refined, something to bind it or hold it together. So you have all this charcoal powder, it's just going to go somewhere, so it gets really messy. You see black footprints down the hallway sometimes at the Fine Arts Building. But people realized, really before graphite pencils were developed, they started using silver wire, and I couldn't find my little silver wire I had. I've got it in a little pencil holder. But this is a piece of silver that I use for jewelry. You can get that in the light here. And it's tarnished. You know, silver you have to, if you have real silver at home, silverware, it has to be kept in a special drawer and sometimes kept in little slip covers so it won't be exposed to the light and the air or it tarnishes. We'll talk about that a little more later. But the silver wire can make a mark, and I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that mark here? Let me close this iris down just a little bit. Yeah, you can see that. These are marks made by the silver piece on there. That means that little particles of the silver are coming off on the paper. So people would sharpen a silver wire, and they still do this. My oldest son, when he was taking art classes, did some really interesting silver point drawings, is what they call it, because that material comes off on there just like graphite or charcoal would. And of course, you have different erasers, and some of you have used kneaded erasers. Anybody ever seen one of those? And you knead something, K-N-E-A-D, like you knead bread dough. This is just it's pretty much pure rubber, but if I can get a grip on it here, it's not been used very much, but I can kind of pull it apart and work it like this, and you can see how it's stretchy. And you can take that rubber then and either press it against something like this, graphite, or run across it, and it will erase. But you can also take, and this is just one of these white, they call them magic rubber erasers, or a pink eraser like this. And I use erasing sometimes in my drawing by sharpening an eraser to a point, and I've got several different ones in here like that, using a razor blade. So you can use the eraser as a part of the tools in drawing. And this is it's an eraser that's made like a pencil, but it's got a little brush on the end. They used to call these typewriter erasers in the day when you didn't have word processing. You'd type something, you could erase part of the typing and then replace it with a correct letter. That was in the days before they even made whiteout. Your slides will show pastels, colored pastels, which are, I'm going to open this back up just a little bit. Our color's kind of strange. There we go. And this just colored chalk and different sizes and colors. Some of these I like because they're really bright, nice and bright colors. Colored pencils. Some of you have used those before. I think what rolled off in the cubby hole there was my sharpener for these, because they make a special sharpener. Have any of you used Prismacolor colored pencils? You can get the map colors, but these are better, lots better, right? They blend well, and there's even a special blending pencil made for them, and it's better than the blending stump will do, so it's made specially for that. But these are, it's a particular type of material. It's not greasy like graphite, it's not chalky like pastel, it's sort of waxy. But these blend well. But separately, these are like $1.25 or $1.50, aren't they, Felicia? Yeah. Yes.
Every single Prismacolor that I got for Christmas a few years ago.
Yes.
I just asked for Prismacolors.
All right, there you go. That's what my granddaughter does. All right. Yeah, and you can get them, what, do you have a set of 72 or something like that? The big box, okay. Yeah, and they add colors every once in a while. They'll add a new color just like crayons do. And I didn't bring any crayons today. I still use wax crayons in my drawings. And a lot of artists do Crayola crayons. There's even a thing called white charcoal. This is really a misnomer, because if you burn wood, it's not white. It's going to turn into carbon. So the carbon has to have a counterpoint, I guess, so they made this white. Here's another white charcoal pencil. It actually says charcoal white on there. But that's sort of a misnomer. It's not really charcoal, it's just a chalky substance similar to charcoal. I was looking for, here's the different animal in the bunch, and you'll hear me talk about this. This is Conte crayon, and I have a set of these, but I didn't grab them up. But Conte crayon is not waxy, it's not chalky, it's not crumbly or anything else. And it was invented when there was a shortage of graphite, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So, not to go too far with this and spend too much time, but there's a whole variety of things out there. And then we'll talk about ink. Now, I have a couple of ink pens here. Oh, and sometimes I'll use this chamois, and this is a piece of soft leather, to blend pencil or charcoal. You can tell it's been it can be washed and cleaned up, but it's used to blend this pencil or charcoal. These are quill pens. This is called a crow quill pen, and these are actually made from, and I didn't bring this, I'll bring it next time. They're steel versions of what were done as feathers, and these are in holders, and they're made to dip into ink. And you see all these old movies. Some of you have gone to a wedding or something fancy, and they have you sign in, and they've got a ballpoint pen with a feather on the end of it. That's like the old quill pens used to be. So, but in the old version, you'd had to sharpen the actual feather to a point, but it was hollow. I'll try to get this where you can see it. It was hollow, and the quill, and these are still called quills even though they're made out of steel, would wear down and it would have to be sharpened. But these are refined, they've got a little hole in the center and they're actually split on the nib there. We call that point a nib. And that's dipped into ink, India ink. And so the ink, I'm not getting ink out in here, they'll fuss at me. The ink is in little bottles and you can dip that pen in there. So anyway, just a quick look at materials. Some of you know these materials, some of you may have never seen some of these things. So just give you a little heads up and think about what the materials are that these artists use to create things. So let's get back. Any questions about any of that right now? I'm going to switch off this camera and go back here and we'll kind of pick up where we were last time. And I think I was at slide 8. So we kind of talked about, they got me kind of painted in a corner here. There we go. Here's where we were the other day. Okay, Picasso's Guernica. And I really didn't make any marks on anything. I will show you this. I'm going to go back to this for just a second because I think it's instructive. To the design that's over here on the Student Services Building, the mosaic, the New Morning, it's the sunrise. I went out actually and took photographs, but I also did some drawings, and here's not one of those drawings, but this is a gesture drawing for just a sunset, and I was trying to, it's kind of strange to see this. You can see the quick marks that I made on this. Let me see if I can open it, and that's not good either, is it? Okay, there we go. You can see it a little bit better. Our camera's kind of doing some strange things. Anyway, this is a quickly drawn, what we call a gesture drawing, which is a sketch. And then I was flipping through this earlier and looking at some of the drawings I have in here. And I have some that are a little more involved. This is what I would call a study. I did a drawing of a tree, and you can see some of the leaves in the tree. That's a little more than a quick sketch, right? I took a little more time to do that. And that's just done with graphite. But if you see this actual drawing, it comes across better than on the camera. You can see the texture of the bark, and you can see the leaf shapes and so on. So you can't do that quickly in a sketch. You have to take a little more time. So we talked about studies and different ways that artists do things, and then a finished drawing. Some of you went with us over to the Fine Arts Building. You got to see my portrait. I worked on that, my self-portrait, and it's large, right? It's a big drawing. I worked on that for more than a year, just off and on when I had time. Here's, and I'm not with page numbers here, this is this kind of experimental thing this artist was doing and sketching, not serious finished drawings or anything. This one, Leonardo was doing this as a means to an end. It was a drawing that was a study for use in a painting and using charcoal and white chalk and so on. Now that's a pretty serious drawing, right? If you own this drawing, you could sell it for serious money, in $1 million probably just for a small drawing. This is one of Leonardo's studies for a sleeve for a painting that he did. But you see how he captured the cloth, the form of the arm and the hand perfectly. And this is Raphael's. This is the other Ninja Turtle, right? Raffaello da Sangio. The School of Athens we looked at before. This huge mural, fresco mural that's on the wall in the Vatican. But this drawing, this study, look at the size of this drawing. It's over 9 feet tall and 26 feet wide. Now he transferred that directly to the wall. Now I want you to notice that word there. What does it say? Cartoon. Well, it's not Looney Tunes, right? But a cartoon in this case is a preparatory drawing. And sometimes you hear them pronounce it as carton, which is the basic word where we get our word for paper. Paper carton, cardboard box, whatever. But the cartoon in this instance was his preparatory drawing, and I think this one either had chalk on the back. Leonardo and Michelangelo sometimes used little holes they punched with a pen on the outline of something, then they'd put a chalk bag on it and transfer it that way. But he used this and put it directly on the wall to transfer the figures, plus he worked out a lot about shadows and perspective and everything else. Now there's the finished work. This is the School of Athens, fresco painting on the wall. You walk into this room in the Vatican, it's like, wow. You just want to stand there for a long time and look at it. You can see part of the actual ceiling there and the wall down below with other paintings and so on. But this is pretty powerful work. But that was if he hadn't done that preparatory cartoon, he wouldn't have been able to do this, right? So he worked it all out. This is not in the text. I wanted to show you this though. John Biggers, an African-American artist, some people say black artist, however you want to think of it. But I don't really think I think of people as people. But anyway, John Biggers started out, I got to meet Mr. Biggers one time in Austin, and our school was honored for some work that we'd done with students. We got to go to the Paramount Theater, and we got to go to the Governor's Mansion. It was pretty fancy. But that was all cool, but meeting Mr. Biggers, it was the thing that stuck in my mind. And I had known his work, and I got to talk to him about it. He said, you know, here I am in the Governor's Mansion. And he said, I was this kid trying to earn money. I was starving, helping my family, but they needed a janitor's job in the art department. And he said, I thought, well, I love art. So he started cleaning up the floors. And he said, I'd clean the toilets, bathrooms, everything. But he said, I got to meet the art professors, and then finally he got to be a student. He earned enough money, and they helped him out. He became this amazing artist. And this was the story of these people who were so poor in the city where he lived. I think he lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania State. Penn State is a big art school, and many of the professors who I had at Tech went to Penn State. But powerful. This is just a study for his finished drawing, but it's pretty powerful. And Mr. Biggers, big guy, these huge hands, this deep voice, just as gentle as milk. I really, really think that was a special time. So here they are, the dry media listed. And we're going to look at them in turn, so you don't have to write them all down. We talked about silver point, charcoal, chalk pastel, pencil, graphite, crayon, and then Conte crayon. That's the different animal. We'll look at them in turn. So silver point. And you can also use gold. My white gold wedding band, sometimes if I'm brushing a piece of paper, if it's a certain texture paper, it'll make a line on the paper. Some of the gold actually comes off. So metals can do that. Usually you have to prepare, you don't have to write all this down, but you have to prepare the surface so it has a little texture. So it will pull that material off, but they're very delicate. And this is one that's not in your text. This is done by Raphael, the master, in preparation for a drawing that, I don't know if I have the painting. I thought I had the painting there. Anyway, this is a study of the head of the Virgin and the Child, but a beautifully drawn thing. Now the thing, a lot of people don't like silver point. You can't erase it. You can't erase it. You could take a razor or a sharp knife and scrape off some of the material if you've got a heavy base, gesso or ground that's on there. But some people say, forget it. You know, I'm going to make mistakes. But this is the hand, the skilled hand of the young Raphael. And you can't shade with it like you would with pencil. You have to make these lines. And here's Leonardo's silver point drawing with some highlights he added in there. This is just it's not a finished drawing, just a study. But you can see the skill in the hand of Leonardo. This is a French artist, Alphonse Legros. Silver point drawing. Very delicate drawing. We talked about different things, and I'm not in the text at all, but just different ways of showing blending, hatching, cross-hatching. We looked at value scales before. Here's color pencil drawing. Now, that almost looks photographic in a way, but someone had to be really good to do this, right, with colored pencil, and to do the blending. But you can see some of the texture of the paper, especially in the sky. They blended it very well around the faces, probably using a photo as a reference, but very skillfully done drawing. And you can't really erase colored pencil very well either. It's one of those kind of demanding things. Charcoal, and again, you don't have to write all this down, but probably it's the first art material anybody had, because they were using wood fires to keep themselves warm, and they noticed, well, this is dirty, and so they took the charcoal and they began using it. They even crumbled up charcoal and mixed it with different things, animal fat, but they also mixed it with saliva, because spit is a binder, and I'll talk about that later too. But there are different kinds of charcoal, some that are very soft, like the vine charcoal I showed you, and some that are put in sticks. But it needs to be fixed with varnish. I have a friend that does charcoal drawings, and I bought a drawing from her one time, and I said, "Oh, this came off of my hands. Did you spray it?" She said, "Oh, I never spray my drawings." Okay. So as soon as she left, I sprayed it. And use Aquanet, extra hold, unscented. It works great on your drawings. And there's a fixative you can buy. Aquanet is about $2 or $3 at Walmart for a big can. The fixative for a little can is like $10 at the art supply store. Same stuff. It's just a little bit of a varnish. Here's a chalk drawing done by Raphael in a red chalk. Some people put chalk and charcoal in the same category. There's his drawing that he transferred to the canvas for this Madonna. You can see the same figure there, but done in oil paint on canvas. Here's page 142 in your text if you're following along. This is Michelangelo. Some people say Michelangelo Buonarroti. The red chalk study for the Libyan Sibyl. This is one of the figures, and the Sibyls were not really in the the Bible that many of you have. That idea of the Sibyl is one of the prophets who foretold different things that God gave them. But look at how, this is actually not on the ceiling, but one of the side panels in the Sistine Chapel. Look at how Michelangelo studied the foreshortening view of the thumbnail and the toe, and yeah, those are the toenails, I'm sorry. But the position of the hand and everything. And this is just a study. It's just a preparatory drawing, but this is how it turned out in the fresco painting. So he got here from this. He understood the musculature. And I told you he dissected bodies to understand how all that worked to do this beautiful painting. Here's Kat Kollwitz, a German artist who lived through both world wars, lost one of her sons. This is on page 135. It kind of skips around a little bit in my presentation. But this is a quick drawing. You can tell she spent more time on her hand and her face, but then just indicated the arm with these quick movements, more of a gesture. But then drawing can be, this is not in the text, but look at the detail in this. It's like a photograph, isn't it? And charcoal can be that precision. And taking an eraser and pulling off material, adding in fine, delicate lines. So charcoal can be that amazing. This charcoal and graphite on paper, it's 38 feet long. So this artist, Zhang Chun Hong, took a roll of paper, and she said, I wanted to draw what hair was like as a braided hair. And so she did this drawing that went down the wall and across the floor of the studio. So it can be very delicate and very, very amazing. Pastels, this is Degas, the French artist Degas, showing this woman taking a bath in this shallow tub, And you can see the marks, how the strokes of the chalk pastel on there. And of course, these have to be sprayed too with fixative or they'll be destroyed accidentally. This is a pastel drawing. Anybody tell me what page that's on? I'm still learning this text. Yeah, page 143. Degas' drawing of dancers. He loved the ballet and he did drawings, paintings, and sculpture of the ballet dancers. And this is his student, Mary Cassatt, who came from America. In those days, you had to go to Paris to be an artist, serious artist. Oh, I studied in Paris. Well, the world is different now. But you can see his influence. This is her sister-in-law and her niece and nephew. She did a drawing of them. You can see the strokes of the chalk pastel, right? And that carried forward in her painting. This is George O'Keeffe, who taught up at Canyon and in Amarillo. And this is one of her charcoal drawings of a banana flower. I think we still have a banana tree on this campus. Y'all been in the Technical Arts building, those stairs? There's a banana tree growing in there. We used to have orange trees too in the administration building. But you'd see these flowers come out, and it actually, they grew bananas in there. It's not as healthy as it used to be. But George O'Keeffe just took this one thing and just saw the beauty in it. It did this very sensitive drawing. This looks like a photograph of the package, right? But it's using charcoal and pastel, and ensanguine is a type of darker, thicker, harder chalk to do the string. That took a lot of skill, right? Amazing understanding. And this is penciled by the same artist, Claudio Bravo. I used to give my drawing students in drawing one a paper sack, and they'd say, "What do you want us to do with that?" Open it up, then crumple it up, and then set it there. So they had a lot of fun crumpling it up until they realized that was going to be their subject for the next week. Okay, Mr. Hope, you mean. But they learned a lot from it, and looking at those wrinkles and the light and shadow. This is in your text, and it shows the undulations in the waves. So that's graphite on paper. Very sensitive look at very difficult thing to draw is water. There's Georgia O'Keeffe. She taught in what we know as West Texas A&M. Now, then it was called West Texas Normal College. And I always say, since I'm a tech grad, it's A&M now, so it's not normal anymore. Anyway, somebody might get that. But she just did these drawings from things she saw in nature. She went hiked down in Palo Duro Canyon, loved the West Texas wide open space, but did these drawings like this. So dry media, we talked about, you don't need to see all that. Chalk and pastel. This is a drawing by the artist Chuck Close in pencil. Now look at the size of this drawing. 120 inches would be 10 feet. So this is over 9 feet tall. That's a big self-portrait. I think my self-portrait's big in my office. This is big. And by the way, Chuck Close was a chain smoker, and eventually he woke up one morning, he couldn't move because his spinal artery collapsed because of heavy smoking. And he was paralyzed, and he had to recover from that. He doesn't smoke anymore. He doesn't draw like this either. So that looks like a photograph, right? That's how precision he did. And he enlarged everything with a grid to be able to do that kind of detailed pencil drawing. And eventually, this is what he had very limited movement. And he was in a whole brace system. And he was in a wheelchair for a long time. He's in and out of the wheelchair now. But he just does these horizontal and vertical marks and diagonal shapes. But if you squint your eyes at that, if you're sitting at the front of the room, look back there, you can see on the screen, kind of squint your eyes, you can see the portrait, right? He doesn't have the long hair anymore, but that's his portrait using pencil and marker and India ink. Now crayon, wax crayon we talked about, and this is a crayon drawing. This is what they call some of the ledger drawings. And Yellow Nose, that's the artist's name, was an American Indian. And he drew this from his memory of the Battle of Little Bighorn. Who won that battle? it was a resounding defeat for the American army, and the Indians far outnumbered them, and they didn't have enough men or enough bullets to fight the Indians. So this is drawing, look, it's on like notebook paper, ledger paper. So that's why they call these ledger drawings. And the Indians, they were there. So they depicted this gruesome battle in pretty gory detail. But doing colored pencil, some of these are done in crayon. Now, I've lost my page numbers, but let's see if we can figure out where this is. This is the artist, Georges Seurat. And there are a lot of things I think they left out of the text. Anybody have the page number for this? The ledger drawing was on page 144. Anyway, here's Seurat, who's the artist who did this. This is in the text, right? Help me out, Sean. What page? Yeah, page 138. Thank you for... this is done with Conte crayon. Now, Conte crayon is this stuff that I showed you, this little stick I have. I have a set of these. They're fairly expensive, but during the time when Napoleon thought he could take over the world and crowned him, he took the crown from the Pope and put it on his own head. I'm not going to wait on you. I'm emperor of the whole world. That's what he thought. He made a pretty good stab at it, but when he got to Russia in the winter, it didn't work out so well, and he ended up exiled on an island, probably poisoned by someone who didn't want him around anymore. But because this part of Belgium that had the graphite mines was off limits, and the French couldn't come in there was no more graphite. And Napoleon said, we have to have pencils, even in those days. So he said, I'm going to give a prize to someone who can come up for a substitute for a pencil. And this man named Conte came up with Conte crayon. And so they had Conte crayons to use instead of pencils. And it's still a secret formula. No one knows exactly what's in Conte crayons, just like Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper. It's a secret formula. And so we know it's not waxy, we know it's not greasy like graphite. It's something, it's got some carbon in it, but we're not sure exactly how it's made. But he got the Cordon Bleu, the Blue Ribbon Prize, and a money prize, and started a business that still exists there in Paris. So here's this grainy kind of look on this paper that's like a canvas almost. And the tooth of the surface is important to a drawing, smooth or rough. Here's a Conte crayon drawing by Seurat. This is one of his studies for the painting we've seen before, Le Grand Jatte. We'll talk about it later. Here's a Conte crayon drawing by Chuck Close with his little grid system showing there. You kind of squint at that and you can see the expression on his face pretty well. This artist is in your text. Yeah, there's Seurat. That's on page 138. This artist is in your text. And Whitfield Lavelle, I don't know real well his work, but it shows him working with Conte crayon here, drawing this woman's face. And then this is barbed wire added there. And it's all about escaping from slavery and so on. This is not in the text, but I wanted to show you this. Fellow Texan, some people don't claim him, from Port Arthur, Texas, went to New York in the 50s during the beat period, the beatnik period, and he tried to come up with things that would shock people. So it's more showmanship than artistry, but anyway. He bought a de Kooning drawing, and Willem de Kooning was a fairly famous artist. He found one that was fairly cheap, and then he made this big deal about it, had news people there, and he took an eraser and erased the drawing. And so this is the erased drawing. People say, yeah, you can do anything you want. My dad always said, well, yeah, you could do that, but should you do that? And so that's a good point. I always remember from my dad's teaching, yeah, you can do it, but should you do it? And so this is more of a stunt, right? Publicity stunt. And so, yeah, you can erase it. We talked about fluid media, pen and ink. I showed you the pens. I didn't get ink out. But you can mix water with ink and make a wash. You can use a brush to draw with. And since it's ink, it's still a drawing, right? If we use paint, it would be a painting. And then brush and wash. But, pen and ink's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years. Here's a drawing by Tiepolo. This is not in your text. They don't talk about this a whole lot. But this is pen and ink drawing with a wash with mixed ink and water painted in there with a brush, but it's still a drawing since it's ink. Here's a ink wash drawing by Leonardo. Look at that detail that he put into that. He understood the cloth, right, and how it folded around the knees and the shape of it. And here's Hokusai. We'll look at Hokusai. Remember the Great Wave of Kanagawa? That's Hokusai. And this is his drawing of this egret. You see these around the lakes on the South Plains sometimes, these cattle egrets. But his wash drawing, and of course this calligraphy and taking, I'll talk about brushes later, but taking a special brush, dipping it in ink and making this. And each of those leaves are made with a special stroke. You have to sit just correctly, hold the brush just right, push the tip down, press more, pull toward yourself and lift up. It's almost a very solemn thing. And then of course the beautiful calligraphy that's there. And there's a brush and wash drawing that is in your text on page 147. I wanted to show you this too. Claude Lorraine, the French artist, you can see the strokes to outline things, but you can see these big areas of ink and water mixed together. Here's one that he did in brown ink, studying the Tiber River. Tiber goes into Rome. And Vincent van Gogh used a pen, but he also took a piece of reed and sharpened it enough and made these marks. So he had a whole variety of things to get all that texture. Your authors show digital drawing on page 149. I mean, most of you, I've seen people do drawings on their phone, right? And most of you have used some kind of graphics tools. I love my Photoshop and Illustrator and different things. So I learned to do it all. This is an iPad drawing that's been printed on paper. I want to go back to this for a minute, and we have time. Cartoons, okay? We think of cartoons. I learned to draw from looking at the cartoons, the comic pages in the newspaper when I was a kid. I'd look at Mickey Mouse, and I'd look at Donald Duck and different other cartoons, and I'd try to copy them when I was 5, 6 years old. That was some of my first drawings. But remember, it's derived from the Italian word where we get the word for paper, cartone. And it refers to a full-scale preliminary drawing on paper for bigger projects. But in 1843, the first time cartoon was used as a drawing for a parody, something that had a point to it, and then we know it as something comical. Do y'all know the work of Art Spiegelman? This thing called Mouse, and he spoke at Tech 4 or 5 years ago. He came as a guest, and his thing was to show the mice as the Jews imprisoned by the Nazis, here depicted by cats. And he won several awards for this graphic novel and showing these mice as the Jewish prisoners there in the Holocaust. This is Frank Miller. Some of you know Frank Miller, maybe. If you don't, check him out. You can see the strokes of the ink in this drawing of Batman and Robin, right? Robin with his slingshot there, but very skillful drawing of the light and shadow. Frank Miller has done lots of graphic novels, and some of them have been turned into movies, but his skill at drawing with ink, but it's cartoon with the point. Now here's the very first cartoon that was made to make a point. This is done by John Leach, note the date, 1843, called Substance and Shadow. Now this is the big art museum. But what's wrong with this picture? These are the poorest people in London. They would not be welcome in an art museum. In 1843, they wouldn't make it past the threshold of the door. So Leach is making a point here that there's something wrong with our society, that these people that have all the money are not allowing even poor people to come into the museum. You see this lady who's on a cart and these children that are starving to death looking at the art just like anyone else. So, things change because of cartoons like this. The Frenchman Honoré Daumier, did this drawing of these lawyers, kind of haughty, in charge of the law. And he did some other cartoons. Y'all know Dr. Seuss, right? But did you realize that as part of the war effort in World War II, he did these political cartoons? These made a point because he said, we don't want these to replace Mount Rushmore. We don't want these faces. This is Hitler and Hirohito, who were the leaders of the Axis armies in Germany and Japan. Don't let them carve those faces in our mountains. Buy U.S. savings bonds and stamps. You see the Nazi flag superimposing the American flag down there. So that helps sell war bonds, and I love this one. It says, cages cost money. And you see this huge monster here with a toothbrush mustache, and the little bold, strong eagle representing the U.S. Captured the monster, right? Which is what happened. My favorite, I still watch them all the time. I have collections of them on DVD. But Looney Tunes and the great Chuck Jones. If you're watching any of those old Warner Brothers cartoons, you'll see Charles M. Jones there, or Chuck Jones. He was the master that was the director of the cartoons that gave the look to all these characters. He didn't invent Bugs Bunny, but he gave them the look that most of us know. Came up with Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner and so many other characters. There's his drawing. So as the director, he has to make the character look like it looks and have the expressions. And here's Wile E. Coyote, and what's his expression? It's like, an anvil's going to fall on him, or he's going to fall off a cliff, or something's going to happen, something's going to blow up. So that's the mastery of Chuck Jones, who learned to draw when he was very young. My wife and one of our sons and I got to meet Chuck Jones when he was in Santa Fe. I said San Antonio. Santa Fe still has a Chuck Jones gallery, and we got to meet Mr. Jones there, and so that was a big thrill for us. But when he came in a limousine, had this great hat on, had his cane to steady himself. But he went around to every little kid in the room. There were all kinds of adults there, and I think there was somebody from the governor's office there to meet him. He saw the little kids first, and he said, you know, that's important to me. Tech had a standing room audience for Mel Blanc, and if you ever watch those old cartoons, he's the guy that gave all those voices. Guys now try to imitate him. He was a master of all these voices, but he held everybody in awe doing his voices from these cartoons, and then actually got to go back and get his autograph and shake his hand. So that was a big thrill for me. But cartoons entertain us, but they have very good points to them too. Even these old Warner Brothers cartoons. Y'all need to know your fellow Texan, Tex Avery, who's from down near Waco, and he did Bugs Bunny before Chuck Jones did. And if you ever see these cartoons by Tex Avery, watch for him. He did this thing called the take, this outrageous reaction to something. And if you've seen the Jim Carrey movie, what's the name of the movie? The Mask. He's watching Tex Avery cartoons. He's watching these old Tex Avery cartoons. So when he puts the mask on, what happens to him? He becomes that character, right? So, yeah, this guy's just shattered here. You can go to texavery.com and see some of these drawings. Now, new approaches, what is drawing? Henri Matisse, he got so crippled that he couldn't use paintbrushes anymore, but they specially designed some scissors, and with assistant's help, he was still creating drawings with cutting paper, and you can see the figure of the woman here, it's kind of abstracted, but glued onto paper, these pieces of paper that he cut. And Kai Guo Qiang, or some people say Sai Guo Qiang, using gunpowder and putting it on paper, and this is a big drawing. That's the actual drawing there. For his study for Transient Rainbow, which he set off to commemorate the first anniversary of 9/11, because he was living in New York, moved from China, and this Transient Rainbow, you can watch the video of it on YouTube, but it just lasts a few seconds, but all these beautiful colors reflected in the water there. It's what he had designed. And this guy was one of the first artists to do drawings on his iPhone back when, first iPhones. Now, what is there, iPhone 13 is the new version, yeah. So it's so much easier to draw, but he used his finger and did these drawings for the cover of New Yorker magazine, and, did some pretty amazing drawings. And he said, when I got my first iPad, wow, I was like a kid in the candy store. So, his drawings are like this, and some of you experiment and you do things. These are pretty amazing things that we can do. So what is drawing? It's all those things and much more. So we'll take up painting next time, but I may have something extra for you to do. But we won't have a test until somewhere along the third week of October, so hang easy right now. Y'all be safe, and if you didn't get to see your grade, I'll show you those. You can see those.